Rome was not always a republic. Before senators, before laws, before citizens voted for power, Rome bowed to kings. 7 kings, 7 very different rulers. Some built the city from mud and stone into a rising power. Some strengthened its armies and expanded its borders. And some ruled through fear, manipulation, and betrayal. Every street you see in Rome today, every law that shaped the Western world, every idea of government and authority began under the command of these kings. But power always carries a price, because when authority concentrates in one man's hands, freedom slowly disappears. Tonight, you will witness how Rome was shaped by builders, scarred by tyrants, and poisoned by traitors. You will see how monarchy created Rome's strength and planted the seeds of its own destruction. And by the end of this story, one king's cruelty will push the Roman people to a breaking point, setting the stage for the greatest political revolution of the ancient world. This is the story of the rulers who built Rome and the power that almost destroyed it. Chapter 1. Romulus, the founder king and the birth of authority. When the dust settled after the death of Remus and the marking of Rome's sacred boundaries, the settlement stood at the edge of something entirely new. What had begun as a loose gathering of shepherds, warriors, and wanderers was transforming into a political entity. And at its center stood one man, Romulus. Romulus did not inherit a polished throne or a stable kingdom. He inherited uncertainty, fear, and raw ambition. His authority came not from ancient tradition, but from survival, strength, and decisive action. And the people followed him because they needed order in a dangerous world where rival tribes watched for weakness. The first task of Romulus was simple but critical. Structure. A city cannot exist without rules. Romulus began organizing his followers into permanent groups, assigning responsibilities for defense, construction, food supply, and patrols. Men who had once lived by instinct and rivalry were trained to move together, to follow commands, and to defend shared territory. These early formations would later evolve into Rome's legendary military discipline. But Romulus understood that force alone could not stabilize a society. Power required legitimacy. To strengthen his rule, he selected a group of respected elders and leaders to advise him. And this council, often considered the earliest form of the Roman Senate, gave his decisions structure and credibility. Although Romulus remained the final authority, the existence of advisors created the illusion of shared governance and wisdom. It was a brilliant political move. The people felt represented, the elites felt included, and Romulus maintained control. Under his leadership, Rome began to expand beyond survival. Walls strengthened. Religious rituals were formalized to claim divine favor. Trade slowly developed with neighboring settlements. Outsiders were welcomed, not as equals, but as contributors to Rome's growth. Romulus also reshaped Roman identity. He encouraged loyalty not to family or tribe, but to the city itself. This was revolutionary in a world dominated by clan allegiance. Rome was no longer just a place to live. It was something to belong to. Yet centralization of power carries risk. Romulus ruled as both lawgiver and enforcer. He decided disputes, he controlled military action, he shaped religious tradition. There were no checks on his authority beyond loyalty and fear. Monarchy had delivered stability, but it had also created dependency. If Romulus ruled wisely, Rome would prosper. If Romulus ruled poorly, no institution existed to restrain him. This pattern would echo through Rome's early history. According to legend, Romulus ruled for many years, expanding Rome's influence and strengthening its institutions. Yet his reign ended in mystery. During a public gathering, a violent storm erupted. Thunder cracked the sky, winds tore through the assembly, When the chaos cleared, Romulus had vanished, and some believed the gods had taken him into the heavens, rewarding him for founding Rome. Others whispered that powerful nobles had killed him, fearing his growing dominance. No body was found, no truth was confirmed. Romulus became legend rather than memory, but his impact remained permanent. He had proven that kingship could create order, strength, and unity. He had also shown how much power a single man could hold over an entire society. Rome had tasted monarchy, and it had worked. But now, the city faced its next challenge. What happens when the throne passes to another man? Would the next king build upon Romulus's foundations or twist power toward personal ambition? The future of Rome depended not only on kingship itself, but on the character of those who wore the crown. The next ruler would answer that question. Chapter 2. Numa Pompilius, the king who ruled through peace and religion. After the mysterious disappearance of Romulus, Rome faced an uncomfortable truth. The city had learned how to follow a strong king, but it had never learned how to choose one. Fear spread quietly through the settlement. Without leadership, rival tribes could attack. Internal divisions could fracture the fragile society. The people needed stability, not another struggle for power. Instead of choosing another warrior, the Romans made an unexpected decision. They invited a man from outside the city to rule them. His name was Numa Pompilius. Numa was not a general. He was not a conqueror. He carried no reputation for violence or ambition. He was known instead for wisdom, calm judgment, and deep religious devotion. To a city still haunted by bloodshed and rivalry, Numa represented something radically different: peace. When Numa accepted the throne, he inherited a city shaped by discipline and fear. He understood that Rome did not need more weapons. It needed unity, identity, and moral order. So Numa ruled not through the sword, but through belief. He believed that societies survive not only by strength, but by shared values and rituals that bind people together. To create this unity, Numa reorganized Rome's religious life. He established priesthoods, sacred ceremonies, and festivals that structured the Roman calendar. Time itself became regulated by religious observance. Days were divided into sacred and ordinary. Certain actions could only happen when the gods approved. Public life became intertwined with divine tradition. This system brought discipline without violence. See, people learned when to work, when to rest, when to celebrate, and when to obey sacred law. Religion became the invisible framework holding society together. Numa also introduced laws designed to reduce internal conflict. He encouraged peaceful dispute resolution rather than revenge. He restricted unnecessary warfare and emphasized diplomacy with neighboring tribes. Under Numa, Rome experienced a rare period of calm. Markets expanded. Families stabilized. Trust slowly replaced fear. But Numa's greatest legacy was not peace alone. It was legitimacy. By linking law and leadership to divine authority, he strengthened the idea that kingship served a higher purpose than personal ambition. A king was not merely a ruler. He was a guardian of sacred order. Yet this also carried hidden danger. When power becomes justified by divine approval, questioning authority becomes difficult. If a king claims the gods support him, who dares challenge him? Numa ruled wisely, but he unintentionally created a system where future kings could misuse religious authority to strengthen their control. As years passed, Numa aged peacefully. Unlike Romulus, his reign ended without violence or mystery. When he died, Rome mourned him deeply. He left behind a city more organized, spiritually unified, and culturally structured than ever before. But peace does not last forever. The next kings would not inherit Numa's gentle wisdom. They would inherit a strong city, a disciplined population, and a growing appetite for power and expansion. Rome had learned how to worship. Now it would relearn how to conquer. The age of warrior kings was about to begin. To Chapter 3. Warrior kings and the rise of Roman power. Peace had given Rome stability under Numa Pompilius. But peace also created hunger. A disciplined population, organized laws, and unified religious identity now stood ready for expansion. The calm years had strengthened Rome's foundations. What followed would transform it into a rising power. The next king was Tullus Hostilius, a man whose personality stood in sharp contrast to Numa's gentle rule. Where Numa valued ritual and restraint, Tullus valued aggression, honor, and conquest. He believed Rome's destiny was not to coexist peacefully with its neighbors, but to dominate them. Under Tullus, war returned to Rome. He trained soldiers aggressively, reinforced discipline, and encouraged boldness on the battlefield. The Roman people, having grown comfortable during peaceful years, were pushed back into martial identity. Glory, victory, and expansion became cultural priorities once again. One of the most famous legends of Tullus's reign involved a symbolic war between Rome and its rival city, Alba Longa, the same ancient city tied to Romulus's origins. Instead of full-scale war, 3 brothers from each city fought to decide the outcome. The Roman champions emerged victorious, securing dominance over Alba Longa. But Tullus did not stop there. Suspicious of Alba Longa's loyalty, he eventually destroyed the city entirely and absorbed its population into Rome. This act dramatically increased Rome's size, manpower, and influence. Rome was no longer a village. It was becoming a city-state. Yet militarization carries consequences. Tullus neglected religious traditions, believing strength alone secured favor. None, according to legend, this disrespect angered the gods and led to disasters during his reign. Whether myth or symbolism, the message was clear. Uncontrolled ambition creates instability. After Tullus came Ancus Marcius, a king who blended war with wisdom. He understood that conquest alone could not sustain growth. Expansion required infrastructure, economy, and population management. Ancus expanded Roman territory through controlled warfare while strengthening internal development. He built bridges, fortified ports, and expanded access to trade routes. Most importantly, he founded the port of Ostia, giving Rome access to sea commerce and economic power. Ancus also integrated conquered populations into Roman society rather than destroying them. New citizens strengthened labor, military recruitment, and cultural diversity. Rome became more complex, more urban, and more interconnected. Under these warrior kings, Rome's identity shifted dramatically. It was no longer merely a spiritual community or defensive settlement. It became a machine of expansion. Victory became normal. Military discipline hardened into tradition. Territorial ambition became expectation. Yet as Rome grew stronger externally, internal pressure also grew. Wealth began flowing into the city. Power concentrated among elites. Competition for influence intensified. War created heroes, but also political rivalry. The people began expecting kings not only to protect them, but to deliver success, wealth, and dominance. This expectation would soon reshape how leaders sought power. Because as Rome expanded, leadership itself became more valuable. Ambition sharpened, manipulation increased. And the door opened for kings who would use politics, construction, and influence, not just armies, to shape the future. The warrior kings had transformed Rome into a regional power, but the next king would transform Rome into a monumental city. Stone would replace mud, monuments would replace huts, and political games would begin replacing simple leadership. Rome was about to enter a new phase, one built not only by swords, but by ambition and control. Chapter 4. Tarquin the Elder, the builder, king and political manipulation. When Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, later known as Tarquin the Elder, arrived in Rome, he was not born into its old noble families. He was an outsider, ambitious, intelligent, and dangerously persuasive. In a society where lineage mattered deeply, Tarquin understood that power could still be captured through influence, alliances, and performance. He studied Roman politics carefully. He befriended powerful elites. He presented himself as a visionary. And when the opportunity appeared, he seized it. Through strategic relationships and calculated generosity, Tarquin secured support among Rome's leading families. When the throne became vacant, his political groundwork allowed him to rise above traditional aristocrats and claim kingship. Rome now had a ruler who understood something new. Power was not only won by swords, it was built by perception. Tarquin launched massive construction projects that reshaped Rome's physical identity. Mud paths became paved roads, public spaces expanded. Drainage systems were engineered to control flooding and sanitation. The legendary Cloaca Maxima, that one of the earliest urban sewer systems in history, transformed unhealthy swamps into usable land. Temples rose, markets expanded, public gathering spaces multiplied. Rome was becoming a true city, not merely a fortified settlement. These projects achieved more than infrastructure. They created loyalty. Citizens saw tangible improvement in daily life. Workers gained employment. Merchants gained opportunity. The city felt powerful, organized, and permanent. Tarquin understood the psychology of leadership. Build prosperity, and people will forgive ambition. But while the city flourished outwardly, politics inside Rome became increasingly dangerous. Tarquin favored loyal supporters and marginalized traditional elites. He rewarded obedience and punished resistance quietly. And political power shifted from collective influence towards centralized control. Those who challenged his authority found themselves excluded, silenced, or removed. Corruption grew behind polished stone walls. Power concentrated. Fear whispered beneath prosperity. Tarquin also expanded Rome militarily, using victories to strengthen his legitimacy. Each success reinforced his image as both builder and conqueror, a leader who delivered visible results. Yet his greatest legacy was not architecture or conquest, it was political transformation. Rome began learning that leadership could be manipulated, public support could be engineered, power could be shaped through control of resources, alliances, and perception. This lesson would echo dangerously through Roman history. Tarquin's reign demonstrated that kingship no longer depended solely on divine favor or military strength. It could be engineered through strategy, ambition, and calculated influence. But this transformation carried hidden instability. As political games intensified, loyalty became transactional, trust weakened, ambition sharpened, and rivals began plotting. According to tradition, Tarquin's reign ended not through public rebellion, but through assassination. A political conspiracy removed him violently, proving that power gained through manipulation invites violent resistance. His death exposed a frightening truth. If kings could rise through strategy and influence, they could also fall through betrayal. Rome had now experienced three different models of leadership. Romulus, strength and authority; Numa, peace and religious order; the warrior kings; conquest and expansion; Tarquin, construction and political manipulation. Each model strengthened Rome in different ways. Each also introduced new dangers, and the balance between progress and corruption was becoming fragile. The next king would attempt something radical, shifting power toward the people themselves. But reform often threatens those who profit from control. And Rome was about to learn that changing power structures can be just as dangerous as building them. Chapter 5. Servius Tullius, the reformer who empowered the people. After the assassination of Tarquin the Elder, Rome stood once again at a dangerous crossroads. Power vacuums invite chaos, and an ambitious elites prepared to seize control. But instead of another manipulator rising from the shadows, a very different figure stepped forward: Servius Tullius. Servius was not born into privilege. According to tradition, his origins were humble and even mysterious, which made his rise to kingship unusual in a society obsessed with noble bloodlines. Yet his intelligence, discipline, and political vision earned him support among both elites and common citizens. Servius believed Rome could not survive forever as a city ruled only by powerful families. If Rome continued concentrating power at the top, resentment would explode. So he chose reform. His most important achievement was the creation of a structured census system. For the first time, Roman citizens were classified by wealth, property, and military responsibility. This was revolutionary. Identity was no longer based purely on family status. It was based on contribution to the state. From this census emerged a new political and military order. Citizens were organized into classes that determined how they voted, how they served in the army, and what responsibilities they carried. Wealthy citizens provided heavy armor and horses. Poorer citizens served lighter roles. Everyone had a defined place in the system. This created balance. The rich carried heavier burdens. The poor gained recognition and participation. Rome became more organized, predictable, and scalable. Servius also expanded the idea of citizenship. Conquered populations were increasingly integrated rather than excluded. This strengthened manpower, economic productivity, and social stability. Rome was becoming less tribal and more civic, a community defined by law rather than blood. He reorganized city boundaries, strengthened defensive walls, and improved administrative systems. These reforms turned Rome into a functioning urban state capable of managing growth. But Servius's reforms came at a cost. Traditional elites saw their exclusive power eroding. Influence that once belonged only to aristocratic families was now shared, regulated, structured. For those who benefited from old privilege, reform felt like theft. Whispers began spreading. Ambition returned. Resentment hardened. Power never surrenders quietly. Servius ruled wisely and methodically, but reform made enemies faster than it created gratitude. Political tension quietly built beneath the surface of progress. But lurking within this tension was a dangerous air. Lucius Tarquinius, later known as Tarquin the Proud. He believed Servius had weakened royal authority by empowering common citizens. He saw compromise as weakness and reform as betrayal of royal dominance. Where Servius sought balance, Tarquin sought absolute control. According to tradition, Tarquin plotted carefully. He gathered loyal supporters, bribed elites angered by reform, and prepared to reclaim power through force rather than law. One day, Tarquin confronted Servius publicly in the Senate Assembly. Insults escalated. Violence erupted. Servius was attacked and killed, thrown down the steps in a brutal display of ambition. The reformer was gone, and with him, Rome's fragile balance collapsed. Tarquin seized the throne immediately, ruling without consent, without legitimacy, and without mercy. Fear replaced reform. Power replaced law. The experiment of shared authority had failed, not because it was wrong, but because ambition refused to accept limits. Rome was about to experience its darkest monarchy, and the people would soon learn that a king who rules without restraint becomes a threat not only to freedom, but to survival itself. Chapter 6. The Rise of a Tyrant and the End of Trust. When Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud, seized the throne after the murder of Servius Tullius, Rome entered its darkest royal chapter. Unlike previous kings, Tarquin did not pretend to rule for the people, the gods, or tradition. he ruled for himself. His first move was fear. He removed the remaining influence of the Senate, ignoring its advice and punishing those who questioned him. Political debate disappeared. Public assemblies lost meaning. Decisions flowed only from the palace. Tarquin ruled through intimidation. Opponents vanished. Families were silenced. Wealth was confiscated. Loyalty was demanded, not earned. To strengthen his authority, Tarquin forced massive building projects using near-slave labor. Citizens were compelled to work on temples, fortifications, and monuments without fair compensation. While the city continued to grow outwardly, resentment grew within. Rome was becoming impressive in stone and suffocating in spirit. Tarquin also relied heavily on secret police and spies, creating a culture of suspicion. Neighbors feared neighbors, words were measured. Trust evaporated. The monarchy that once brought stability had become a cage. But tyranny often breeds its own destruction, so the final spark came not from politics, but from personal crime. According to tradition, Tarquin's son committed a violent act against a noblewoman named Lucretia. Rather than submitting quietly, Lucretia revealed the crime publicly and took her own life in protest. Her death shocked Rome. The people saw not just a personal tragedy, but a symbol of royal corruption. Honor had been violated. Justice had been denied. Power had crossed the final moral line. Outrage spread rapidly. Noble families, military leaders, and ordinary citizens united in anger. The royal family had lost legitimacy completely. Led by influential Romans, the people rose up. Tarquin was expelled from the city. The monarchy was abolished. The word king itself became hateful in Roman memory. Never again, the Romans vowed, and would one man hold absolute power over their lives. From this revolution emerged a new political experiment, the Roman Republic, a system designed to prevent kings from ever returning. Power would be divided. Authority would be shared. Leaders would be accountable. Rome had learned its lesson through blood and suffering. Kings could build cities. Kings could create order. Kings could also destroy freedom. The age of monarchy had ended, but the struggle for power had only begun. Because replacing kings does not erase ambition, it simply changes its shape. And in the next chapter of Roman history, the fight would move from palaces into politics. Rome learned a brutal lesson. Kings can build cities, but kings can also destroy freedom. 7 rulers shaped Rome. Through ambition, faith, war, reform, and finally tyranny. And when cruelty crossed the final line, the Roman people rose up and erased monarchy forever. But the story doesn't end here. In the next episode, you'll go deeper into the reign of the most feared ruler Rome ever suffered. The king whose cruelty ignited a revolution and changed world history. Next episode, the king who was too cruel. Why Romans destroyed their monarchy. If you want to continue this epic journey through ancient power, betrayal, and rebellion, subscribe to the channel, like this video to support the series, turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Because when kings fall, new battles for power begin. And Rome's greatest transformation is just ahead.